Death Weekend is one of those interesting films that once you get into like cult horror stuff, you eventually learn of and you probably watch at some point, but it's not really available anywhere. It's never gotten a North American release. It has a German Blu-ray release that looks beautiful, but other than being in the conversation when Canadian cinema comes up, it doesn't get talked about that much. And the reason for that is that its director, William Fruet, aka Bill Fruet, isn't as loved as I think he should be. Now, William Fruet, for some reason, is someone that I've always had a fascination with. Here's a guy, a writer-director, that got in right when the Canadian film industry was jumping onto the feature fictional film bandwagon, and he co-wrote what is essentially one of the first classics of Canadian cinema, Going Down the Road. Along with the director of that movie, Don Shabib, he would go on to co-write Rip-Off, and then William Fruet would go on his own way. And this is where kind of paths diverge. He just accepted at some point in his career that he's just going to make films that are entertaining, that are what the market want, and because the tax shelter era in Canadian cinema, look it up if you've never heard of it before, was happening at that time, it gave him the opportunity to make films. And so there's a fascinating kind of balance there, where I'm unsure what are William Fruet's true passions. Now, he's still alive, but he doesn't really give them any interviews, he's never appeared on any Blu-ray or DVD extras, he's just kind of out there. And what we have is his body of work, like his first directorial effort, Wedding in White, which starred Carol Kane, and is that kind of miserable loser cinema that Canada just made its own. And then you have a second film, Death Weekend, which, yes, I'm getting to it, this is what the video is called, and it's in a genre that I do not like, the rape revenge film. So films that fall under that label are like Last House on the Left, I Spit on Your Grave, and Death Weekend, to say it like that, there's something there that is a disservice to it, because it is just a horror film that creates a level of tension that these movies don't always have, and William Fruet, as writer and director, just has the tone perfectly throughout. The protagonist in the film, played by Brenda Vaccaro, is going down to a big country mega mansion out in the beautiful lake country of Ontario, and after she runs a bunch of jerks off the road, those jerks end up coming to the cottage that they're staying at, and a game of psychological torture play out. Again, this sounds kind of miserable, like funny games, but William Fruet just keeps things constantly shifting sympathy or even just where your emotional attention should go throughout the picture. Now, the jerks that invade, who are led by Don Stroud, are awful, but they're different than the kind of rich jerk that Brendan Vaccaro came to the cabin with. There's almost a glee in seeing these jerks destroy this rich guy's cabin because he is an asshole himself. I understand I'm saying the word asshole and jerk all over the place, but there's a difference in this movie. They're both bad, but they're bad in different ways. And unlike a lot of these films, the woman protagonist, she kind of goes through it stone-faced, always looking to find an angle that will give her the opportunity to get out of it. And when she does, oh man, is it satisfying in that revenge movie way, and is also just gorgeous. This is a film that I actually found an article by the cinematographer talking about the advantages of shooting on 16mm to give things a grit and not necessitate using big lights to shoot stuff. So you get almost like a handheld documentary feel to it with the stylization that William Fruet brings to the project. You can tell that the direction and the screenwriting are working in sync together, and you don't always get that on exploitation films like this. Now, as much as I love Death Weekend, and when I saw it, I was like, who is this William Fruet guy? The rest of his career leaves a little bit to be desired because you almost get the sense that he's struggling with the commercial necessities of the movies that he's making with his own thematic concerns. And what that means is that you get films like Spasms that have a great concept, giant killer snake bites people, and they're supposed to explode. Nobody explodes, unfortunately. Now, these movies look great, but you can tell that Fruet is always pushing against the expectations of what the commercial market wants. That the films are never quite as violent as they should be, or not quite enough genre stuff happens in them. For example, Cries in the Night, aka Funeral Home, is a beautiful looking film, from what I can see from the only available copy, a VHS version, shot by Mark Irwin, that they wanted it to look like Ontario Gothic. And it does look like that, But unfortunately, the movie is not quite a slasher. It's definitely not a supernatural horror film. It's just kind of like a half-baked take on Psycho with a lot of interesting elements and a cast and crew that you can't really tell where the passions lie. And that's the thing about William Fruet, is that he did seem like a really passionate guy early on in his career. In all the films that he co-wrote, the films that he directed, you can find articles out there in Canadian Cinema Magazine where you can see this young, up-and-coming artist who really wants to make an impact on the scene. And eventually, because Canadian cinema landscape looks down on anyone that tries to make entertainment and doesn't even really foster any artists, William Fruet just became another kind of cog in the machine, and he was good at it, and he was able to continue working in stuff like television. He directed probably some of your favorite episodes of the Goosebumps TV show, but after the 80s, he never really got into the feature film role. You never get a sense that he was able to follow any of his passions, and it's such a bummer when you look at something like Death Weekend, which is so interesting. And I think that we should be talking about William Fruet. I think that the things that he did, especially early on in his career, do have value, but when you talk about Canadian cinema, you don't really talk about that many names other than Adam McGoy and David Cronenberg. So this is what I'm trying to do with this video series, which I'm hoping to make a regular occurrence on this channel, is to talk about films like Death Weekend, or filmmakers like William Fruet, who time has kind of forgot. But I think their stories deserve to be told because we cannot have a present when it comes to Canadian cinema without knowing what came in the past. To know these artists and these filmmakers that were just not appreciated in their time. I found an article by Pierce Handling in Canadian Cinema Magazine that was just about, William Fruet, he's not really good at making movies. Why would you write an article like that? That can only make an artist feel like, oh, there's no value here. They do not appreciate what I'm doing. And William Fruet never ran off to the United States, which a lot of Canadian filmmakers do. He just continued to work in Canada, and where the work was television, where you don't really get to be an artist. You just need to be a very good journeyman and be able to deliver the thing on time and on budget. So after all this ranting, and I hope that not every one of these videos will be that, I cannot make that promise. I hope that you go out and watch Death Weekend, and also Rip Off, and even Wedding in White. Unfortunately, like I said, some of these films, like Wedding in White, are available in beautiful widescreen transfers. You have to buy them from places like iTunes because they've never gotten any physical media release where they look good. So Death Weekend is available on a German Blu-ray, which is all region, so you don't need an all-region player to watch it, and you can get it on diabolicdvd.com. I will post the link below. I do not make any money off of them, but I love the website, and I hope that you will check it out. And again, please subscribe to this channel. I will post a new video on Canadian cinema every week up until people just stop watching them. So make sure to subscribe. And check out the Important Cinema Club podcast, where I've talked about Canadian cinema tons of times. The link is below. Thanks for watching.